Welcome to Nordic Magic Link. Today I have Zimon August with me, and he is an intuitive from Denmark, also a fellow Dane. And his field is in geobiology, earth currents, dowsing rods, Feng Shui, Numerology, and sound healing. So we have lots to talk about. And welcome, Zimon August.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast here.
It's a pleasure to have you. And I would like to get started with just a little bit about you. How did you get started with this type of work?
It's kind of a long story, but a long story short, I think most people who come to the alternative world have had some sort of crisis, either mentally or physically, and I had sort of both. So I was swimming at a high level, and then I got sick all the time, and I was eating everything that the dietitian told me to do, and it only made me depressed, and I got allergic, I got sick, was tired all the time, both mentally and also physically. So all of a sudden, like one day I got sick and I knew it was the end. I couldn't continue swimming, even though I loved it, I couldn't continue. So I just got this energy to say no and stop swimming. And then I went down to the library and got all the different books about health and nutrition I could get a hold of, and started my journey more on the physical aspect. But I had more crises than just that one. When I was around 18, I moved to where I am right now, actually 20. And I had an education in nutritional, like holistic nutrition. And even though I knew all these things about how to think, how to eat, I was getting sick again. And I couldn't sleep in the night. I woke up more tired after I slept than when I went to sleep. And I prayed for a solution. And one day I had a letter come through my mail who said something about, do you know your best directions in Feng Shui? And I always thought about Feng Shui as something of, I didn't really believe in it. So to be honest, I thought it was sort of mostly about interior design and making it more pretty. But Feng Shui is much more than that. But I found out that I had my office turned towards my total lost direction, which for me is west. And my bed was also turning that direction. So both the bed and the... so
wow.
I see it as a learning experience. It wasn't pleasurable back then, but it had a gift inside the pain. It had like, it was wrapped in sandpaper, but it was actually something that pushed me forward into looking into the environment, looking at, just by changing my bed and changing my office, how it would affect my body and my mental state. Within 3 days, I started getting new ideas how to earn money. I was also like almost bankrupt. I had one experience where I was ordering food, and I didn't have money on my bank account anymore, I found out. So I had to leave saying that I went to a bank, but I couldn't pay for it. So I felt awful for that.
Yeah.
But within a month, I had all the different debt paid out just by getting the new ideas and taking action on it and getting the better Feng Shui. So I found out that there must be something about this, and I started to look into it. And my teacher who taught me about Feng Shui, she also taught about dowsing. And all my life, I've been trained to use only my left hemisphere, all about language and logic and thinking like very rational. And I had to open up my right hemisphere, my intuition, the whole picture, in order to get the dowsing rods to work. And it took me 3 months to learn how to do it. Just one night in the evening, very late, all of a sudden, went through the meditation, and then the rods opened up, and I could feel the energy moving. I was like, what's going on here? It's like a ghost or something.
And just for those who don't know dowsing rods, what are they? Can you describe them?
Dowsing rods are usually made of copper, and they are used to find underground water and find ley lines, which is the Earth's sort of acupuncture points, the nerve system of the Earth. So the ley lines are in the etheric field, so not necessarily in the physical field, but in the etheric field. It's also used to find the electromagnetic field of the Earth. Something is called Curry lines and Hartmann lines. And most of these things are natural and not unhealthy, but sometimes when we are staying and sleeping in it, the energies can be stressful for us. So you use the dowsing rods as a sort of magnification of your intuition. So you are moving the rods, but it's a subtle electrical field that's running through you, sort of, and they're magnifying it.
Okay.
So it's a bit hard to explain, but that's sort of it.
Makes sense.
But I really had to not let go of everything I've learned, but sort of at least be open to not knowing everything and being open to the intuition more and more. So I always had very clairsentient. I was always very able to feel other people's emotions and feel other people's pain. I've had experiences where I was at work when I was 18, and I was standing talking to a colleague, and all of a sudden I collapse in my right knee, and I pull up my pants and trousers, and then I see that I'm completely red and very warm on my right knee. So I get off from work. My mom calls to tell me that my mom and my dad, they got home from vacation. And at that exact moment where I collapsed in my right knee, she fell on that knee in the airport, getting out of the bus.
Wow.
So energy is not limited by distance or our physical aspects. Energy is all around us, universally connected. So what I discovered is when I worked with dowsing and Feng Shui and sound healing, I discovered a different cosmology, a different way of seeing the universe. And instead of focusing on black holes and the universe is sort of deadly and out to get you, it's called electric universe, where everything is interconnected, and from the smallest to the biggest has the same sort of template. So as a physical body, we also have an electromagnetic field around us. We can measure our brain, the different electrical currents in our brain, and also in our heart. And because we've separated ourselves from nature, we don't get the grounding that we need from being bare feet or walking bare feet on the ground, and we don't get access to natural sunlight, which also is the plus in the battery in our electromagnetic field. So I feel like I've been constantly shown through my obstacles or my blockages what my next step is. So it started very physically, then more emotionally, and then spiritually, and then you have to go even beyond that to the field of no limitations, no convictions, no thing. Because every time you put a word on it, you're limiting it, you're separating yourself from the unity. So it's a bit hard to explain with words sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think that when you had that reaction with your knee, do you think that it was so physical on you because you also share DNA with your mom, or do you think it's merely an energetic thing, or a combination perhaps?
I think it's some sort of a combination because I'm more connected energetically to her, of course.
Yeah.
And she could have been thinking about me. So I wasn't thinking about her at all at that moment in time, not consciously, but unconsciously, a lot of things going on because our consciousness is separating a lot of things, a lot of the inputs that we're getting. So we have a very limited bandwidth of what we can actually perceive, at least in consciousness. But our full consciousness and awareness can be aware of everything at once. But it's so big and incomprehensible for a left brain. You just have to sort of surrender to it. And you can't really put it into a box. You can't market it and sell it. You just know that you are it. You are love. You are the unconditional love and awareness. And what I'm here to tell you is that you were already complete and you were already whole, and nothing can change that. And don't take anything I say for granted, or like for, what do you call it? Take it for checking and see what your experience is instead of just believing in what I say. Because I'm no guru. I'm not supposed to be. I'm not gonna be a guru. I'm gonna be a human being, filtered through this unconditional awareness, just this filter working through me. And I could, at the best, point in a direction and open the door for someone, but I can't make people go through the door. I can't control what other people perceive and do or say.
Right. That's beautiful. Thank you. And
Thank you.
did you, because you also, I think something I totally forgot to mention, you're also an author. You wrote a book about love. It's only out in Danish, right? So
It's
far.
only out in Danish so far.
Okay. But do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Let's start with the numerology. I've changed my name twice because it makes a connection.
Wow.
And the second time I've changed my name, I was looking at the name changes and I was talking about my teacher in numerology. And she says, okay, this is the writers or the author vibe you're getting here. I was like, whatever. I don't believe you. So that was in January or December, I think, 2 years ago. Then 10 months later, I got the idea for just writing the book, just a headline. So I couldn't resist, or sat down in front of the computer, just wrote the headline, and then an hour later, I've just written 4 pages in 1 hour.
Wow.
And within 1 month, I've written 200 pages and I've published a book. So I didn't get a lot of sleep that month because I was constantly getting downloads. So the vibe I was getting from numerology was getting cosmic downloads. So I was constantly getting these downloads. And one of the things I've always known sort of internally is that I'm here to teach love. Teach love sounds weird. Be love. And from being an example of love, you also get all the different, just today I got you're not loving because you're saying something that's dividing people. So what I see love is that you say the truth, no matter the reaction from other people. And you give yourself approval instead of trying to get approval from other people. So what I've noticed is that there was some sort of part of me that wanted her approval for what I was saying, but that's not very loving. It felt contracted. So instead of getting love out of any situation, you're bringing love to the situation. You're bringing love to see what is in the highest good of everyone involved. And we have so many human conditions being put on love, like you can only be loved if you do like this, or behave like that, or look like this. And that's human love with conditions. Unconditional love doesn't have those limitations. No conditions at all. It allows us to breathe, it allows us to live through this body. It allows the darkness and the light to be there. It doesn't judge. And most people with a human perception has a difficulty accepting that, because we want God or love to judge us or help one side and not the other side. And we wouldn't know what love is without having the experience of the opposite of love. So we're getting a very clear picture of what love isn't by looking into the world right now, but we're also getting a very clear picture of what love is. And I feel there's a unity that's coming up more and more in these months. Even though we're trying to be divided, I can feel that something's happening. I can see it in the way people react, how people talk, that they're waking up and saying, you're not my opponent. You're not evil. You are also a human being. Not perfect, but we're here together. And I was actually told by the clairvoyant in August last year that I would write a book. And again, I sort of laughed at it. But then 3 months later, I was writing the book 4 months later. And she told me, okay, you are going to write for like Hay House or something. And I'm like, okay, maybe in 10 years time.
Maybe sooner.
Maybe sooner.
Yeah. We need all hands on deck right now.
Definitely.
All the good voices.
We're the volunteers that decide to come in this day and age to support Earth. And we're doing our job, even though it's very hard at times and feels very lonely. And it's because we're seeing things that other people not perceiving yet.
Yeah.
So by being the black sheep, or by being someone who sticks out, it feels lonely and feels hard at times, but never give up. There's still hope. I can see things I've been working on 10 years ago are starting to pop up right now. I can see also the difference in my family, where I was trying very hard to get some information out. And then a few years later, it just came out naturally when I wasn't pushing or preaching or anything. Because when you try to control other people, they have to push back. But if you just do whatever you do and let them, their path is their path, just allow that to be, it seems like it creates non-resistance. Like instead of having resistance and pushing against the world, it just allows them to expand and grow and follow your example.
That's a very good point to bring up, especially for people like you and I, people in the truth movement, because we do see a lot of this stuff happening, and it can feel very frustrating when your closest ones will not listen when you see something that is very, very bad, and you feel we need to act now, and they just don't see it. They don't want to look at it. So that's a good point. We have to keep that in mind. Everyone is on their own path, and even though the majority are still unconscious on many levels, we still, a little light here and there lights up, and when we hit that 20%, I think it will go very fast, and I think we're probably there, almost there.
Exactly. We are a collective field. So what each one of us are doing has an influence on the collective field. And we sort of have to have less people being conscious than we think. There was an experiment or sort of research in Japan where they talk about ape or monkey number 100. So they had some separate islands, and they were delivering or putting out was it sweet potatoes, I think, to the monkeys. And then one of the monkeys apparently decided that it was better if they washed the sweet potato, tasted more delicious probably. So it decided to do that, and it also started teaching the monkeys to do the same. And then they called it monkey number 100, the experiment, because all of a sudden, all the different islands not connected with that island, they did the same. They learned the same behavior. So that gives me hope that whatever we're doing on an individual level also has an effect on the collective. So even though it seems like no one's waking up, that's because we're getting all the information mainly from the mainstream media, and they're definitely the last ones to wake up.
Right.
Because if you control the information, you control also people's consciousness. So that's why the media are always controlled by the financial, economic interests and the political interests, and we're being surveilled more than ever. So they know almost everything about us, and they can use our interest in doing something for the climate, doing something against pollution to their own benefit.
Yeah.
And we've seen that several times. So we have to be really aware and also have some compassion with the people who hasn't really awakened yet, because all of us have been there at some point in time. And it's a big step from going to believing that everything that mainstream media says is true, and only politicians can't lie, or that there's only one solution, and that's taking a drug, to seeing the world it's not as black and white as you think. It's more gray. So you have to be open to each person needs a different solution.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think most people think, no, the media is, is full of journalists, and they do research and they check things out. But actually, most of the news that we get, it comes from, Reuters or APA, who owns those organizations. And a lot of the time we get media, they actually send out these, I think they're called video news release, VNRs, where they get a whole package, and then they just run with that, and they can then put some of their journalists in, so it looks like it's something that they made here at that station, but it's actually coming from these organizations. And I think it was the Danish journalist Tommy Hansen who he had an article out in a magazine that I also volunteer for, called Free 21. And that article talks about how Council on Foreign Relations is actually involved in the media in the entire West. So you have the people in charge are usually members of Council on Foreign Relations. And this is how you can get a streamlined, a unified message through. Also, most people are unaware that in the United States, propaganda was legalized in 2012. So that means that you can actually, that's the thing, like you always think, oh, propaganda, I would notice if I was propagandized against, but that would defeat the purpose of propaganda. You don't know that you're propagandized against, because then you wouldn't believe it, you wouldn't trust it. So of course, propaganda is, it comes out as news stories. And that is totally legal in the United States. And even before it was legal here to do it on American citizens, it was still being used in the rest of the world from from organizations within the United States. So there are a lot of things that people are just not aware of, and obviously they won't hear on the news.
It's like it's been put out into the light these days. It's more obvious than it's ever been before.
Yeah.
We're starting to connect the dots more than we've done before. More it's been this event and this event. Now we're trying to connect the dots. And more people through the last 20 years have opened up their hearts and their consciousness. And when you listen to intuition and to your heart, you become more and more independent of what's going on. They can still affect your emotions. They can still try to put you down into your reptilian brain, so the fear and survival mode. But you become stuck in it less and less, and it becomes quicker and quicker to get through it. So what we've seen on a collective level, that they've been really using our reptilian brain to control us. So that's what they're using, fear as a control tool. And if you look at the different reports coming out about the strategies by the governments in Germany, in Denmark, Norway, which has been leaked, you can see that they're actually using propaganda to promote the solution that they want. So they're getting all the influencers, all the media to come with the same message, and destroying and shaming everything that's contrary to that. That thing that's critiquing or saying, hey, there's something wrong here, we're not going in the right direction, are being pushed aside. And if you want to do the best thing for everyone involved, you have to open yourself up to different opinions, and not reducing the other person to an anti-vaxxer, or reducing them to be a conspiracy theorist, or what do you call it, silver hat?
Yeah, tinfoil hat.
Tinfoil hat. That's the Danish translation. Tinfoil hat. So it's so easy to ridicule the other person and to fight the other person. It takes courage to listen and being open to, okay, maybe what I was being told wasn't correct. Maybe there's other ways of doing things. So it's really, really hard, because most journalists, I've learned this already 12 years ago. I was working for an internet company. I was calling the journalists and sending press messages out to them. And they're very, they just take what you write to them and put it in.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bit lazy. So they don't have time, really, what I see. They don't have time. They have so many schedules and things they need to push and get out, that we can't really blame only the journalist. We have to blame the whole system and say there's something going on with the system. And as you're saying, Reuters and AP and all different, what do you call them? The medias they send out to all the newspapers, they are definitely manipulated, a lot of them, also by the intelligence agencies.
Yeah.
Saw a book, I think maybe it was a link you sent me, about a German journalist who's died now, who talks about
Ulf Kotte, I think his name is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he talks about journalism being prostituted, being bought, and how they pick out the different journalists, and then they send them news, so they have to publish these press releases.
Yeah, they're contacted when they're right out of school by intelligence agencies in the United States, and this happens, we know, at least in the West. And then they're asked, do you want to be part of this club, or I don't know what they call it, organization, and then they get paid trips, conferences and things like that, and they get access to all the top politicians and stuff like that if they agree. But then in return they have to publish certain things that's just sent to them from the intelligence companies.
and I have friends who are journalists and who also work with. I can see they're sort of being bought. They're being given gifts and things, and it's very hard. Once you've been given something, you feel like you owe the other person.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to be neutral, to make a neutral recommendation of things when you're being sort of bought. So it's like in the human nature psychology, if you're given something, you feel like you have to give something back. And they're usually a small club. So we have the journalists, and then we have the people providing them the things, and their friends. So you also have a friendship being attacked if you write something negative about the products you're being given. And the same happens in politics. You have journalists being pushed out if they have the wrong opinion, and they don't get access, as you said, about to the politicians, and they're being also politicians. I've seen some ridiculous things this past month about a guy here in Denmark, the political what do you say, spokesperson, being asked one question, the same question, and he didn't answer it for 10 minutes. It's just the same question, and he repeatedly started to give the same answer, more or less, that didn't answer the question. And I don't understand why people accept that. Instead of, I want people to be honest, even though it's not a hard truth. I just want people to be honest, then we can see what action needs to be taken from that point of view. But it's hard to understand how people want power so much and don't want to make a mistake that they are using spin all the time. It makes no sense to me.
And you actually have a degree in politics, or what is your original your degree?
A degree in international business and politics from Copenhagen Business School. And I actually got a 12, or like the highest grade in statistics. And already back then, I knew I wanted the highest grade there because I knew I was gonna be tested on it. Because if you understand statistics, you can see how much you're being manipulated through research, how they are removing different things and being very biased. So they are accusing the alternative world of the things they're doing themselves. Right. And I see that very often people that are attacking you are actually doing the very same thing that they are attacking you for. So it's like a bullet that hits themselves. And I feel like the resistance that's coming towards the alternative is actually very good, because first we were ridiculed, now we're being resisted heavily before we come to the final part of truth, where we're just being seen as, it's very obvious what we're doing, that we have something that could work also with the conventional science and industry. It's not like you either had to do this or you have to do that. They can work together. And most people in an alternative world actually want to work together. We're working from our heart. We want to create unity. We don't want to divide. We just have issues, not with the individual persons or people that are working in the industry, but there are some people in the industry that are using their power and their money not for the greater good and corrupting the rest of it. And that's in every industry, but it's just more obvious because they have more power and more money. So some people said, if you have money, it enhances what you already are inside. So if you're a good person, it enhances it. If you're a bad person, it enhances it. I'm not saying people are bad or good, but sort of on a spectrum. And it's just very interesting to be alive in this day and age, to see what's happening, because everything is fast forward. So you could have one life, working the same job, having the same family for entire life. And it's just now everything's speeding up. So you have a career on 5 years in this, and then you do something different. You have an ex-wife, a new wife, and you have 3 kids, 2 with the old one with the new, and everything's just changing and transforming quicker and quicker. So you have to really buckle up your seatbelt and see what happens, because everything is moving us forward, whether we like it or not. It's pushing us forward, and we have to go through this mess to see it and to clear it out.
So, what do you think? How do you think the world will look in, say, 5 years?
It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to predict the future, because if we are in the future, we are ignoring the perfection of the now. So everything that's in the future will forever be in the future. So if we're either focused on the past or the future, we're forgetting the now, here and now. So if you want to change the future, change the now. So that's I've tried to look with my dowsing rods into what's happening in the future. They can see the bigger picture, but you can't see what everyone's gonna do, because we have free will to do whatever we want. So it's never gonna be exactly like they predict. It's always gonna be how it's supposed to be.
Right.
But I have some hopes and dreams about the future. And one of my hope and dreams about the future is that we're treating each other and the world with more loving care. And that means not destroying each other, either because we are broken and we have pain inside us, we project it out into the world. So by healing ourselves from our pain and from our past, we are creating a more positive future than we can imagine. And how it's going to look like, it's very hard to tell. Very hard to tell. What else do I see? I see people having a more uplifted consciousness. So the collective consciousness as general is less negative, less hateful. I can already feel it's coming. There's still anger, there's still frustration, there's still fear going on, but we have to go through it to come to the upper levels of energy and emotion. We can't skip it. We can't be here for very long. It's a very destructive phase of humanity, but we need to go through it. And we have to also remember that we have both a constructive side, but also a destructive side. And if we ignore or push down either side, it creates problems for us. So we have to find safe ways to get our destructive side out, but also our constructive side, because we can't have eternal growth in the way they're perceiving it. We can have growth on consciousness level, but on a physical level, we can't have growth forever. That's how I see it. We are moving ourselves away from nature more and more, and we're working against nature. But there's also the organic and the biodynamic movement, which is growing each year. And I could see even in Denmark, even during the crisis where people had perhaps less money, there was an increase in organic production and in organic intake, and people buying it. And just very small things creates a huge difference because they're moving into the direction where you spend your money. But no matter how much money you have, it's more important that you're happy in this moment right now. And you feel like you're enough and you have enough. Because by being that, you attract what you are inside. So we're going from more of a doing all the time, constantly being busy mentally and also physically, to more being what we want. So if you want to be peaceful, we are being peaceful. If you want to have more love, we're being more loving. So it's all about being first and then you have it, instead of doing and then having. So it's a bit of a paradigm shift, and I don't see it perhaps in 5 years, maybe 10 years, 20 years, I don't know. We just started in the Aquarius age, so it might take a bit longer.
Yeah, I definitely hope for the future that more people will return to nature and start permaculture projects and regenerative agriculture and homesteading. And I think the more people do that, the more sustainable you are, and then you're not dependent on the system either. So I really think this is leading the way, both for your own physical and mental health, but also for the planet and for others, for this. And I see a lot of people really doing this and want to move out into nature and start these projects. Some people coming together in groups and creating communities. Some people just doing it with their family, starting a farm. And then I also saw online, there's this like a work away thing where you can go and see like, oh, is there a ranch where they need help, or a permaculture farmstead, and then you can go and work there and stay for a while. So that's a good way to go and actually gain some experience, so you can do it yourself on your land.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think I've also I've had the same dream about moving to the country and having my own farm and taking care of the land. But it felt like right now I have a different assignment. So maybe when I retire, I'll do it. But I've had a garden I've took care of the last few years, and I've grown up with the garden, and it tastes so much better when you produce your own vegetables and fruits and berries. So much more healthy as well, because you put in the love, and you've known it's straight from the soil. And there was some signs of they're trying to create an artificial, not a hunger, but a food
Scarcity.
Scarcity, shortage. Yeah. So I don't think it's going to happen during the summer because there's so much abundance, but there could be a scarcity in the winter. And it's not going to affect necessarily the Western countries that much, but the more poor you are and the less developed countries, you're going to be hit the hardest. And that's always the case. Like, we have this tremendous fear that made the whole world sort of grow inside itself. And the people that are most affected by it is going to be the poor countries again and again and again. But there's some good signs as well, because we've seen the WHO being kicked out of different countries because they're manipulating data with the test.
They're seems very corrupted by money interests.
It's like 75% of their income is from private interests.
Vaccine industry and that sort, right?
Exactly. And it's like they had very good intentions and they have a very good idea about it, but the money and the funding is being from having economic development, eradicating hunger, safe water, healthy, fresh water, and all these kind of things that has a very positive effect. All the funding is being removed from that into vaccines. So you can have a vaccine one day against polio or whatever, and then the next day you die of diarrhea because the health system in the developing worlds have not been funded. So they have very unstable health systems. So we need to focus on the health systems, creating stronger health systems. And we, even in Denmark, you see that they have these new medicines that is more and more expensive. So they're decreasing, because they only have certain budget, they are decreasing the personnel because they have to afford the different new medication. And when I was working in hospitals and different healthcare sector, what I saw is that I had one client or one patient, she was in the hospital for an infection that couldn't clear out for 6 months. 6 months in the hospital.
Wow.
Within a week and a half of me getting her as a patient, where all I did was I talked with her, I touched her, she gave me the signals that what she wanted was this. I gave her what she wanted and it started to heal completely. And 2 weeks after, she was out of the hospital. So it's very simple things like taking care of people, listening, being very positive in your communication and precise, because a lot of doctors are talking Latin or like pharmaceutical speaking. So they're speaking something that an ordinary person doesn't understand. And my bachelor project as a physiotherapist was about the communication. And there's an experiment or research in Norway where they separated people in 2 groups. So they had back issues, and in one group they got the conventional treatment, and the other group they got one treatment where they met with a doctor, met with a physiotherapist, and they told them your pain is normal and your back pain is also something it's very good natured, because most people recover by themselves, and you just have to continue using your body as normal. And they had 100% more people getting back to work just by doing that one intervention. Just do whatever you normally do, because most people have something called fear avoidance. And they were looking into aboriginals. So they had aboriginals who thought like, okay, back pain is just normal part of life and it disappears again. And then they met with the conventional science and system. And then they got all these ideas about, oh, back pain, I could end up in a wheelchair. I could end up being handicapped, and it's the pain is something very dreadful. And it created much more pain. They were much more invalidated, like couldn't do the same. And what we know now in the physiotherapy science is that pain is subjective, you can't measure it, but also that it's all about movement. Instead of having to be careful, it's just about moving. Because most people are taught like you have to have a certain position and straighten up, and you have to, if you're high on one side and the other, it's a problem, but it's not a problem. We're all different, so there's not one solution. It's about talking to people, calm them down, saying how the projections are, and most things the body recover by itself. It just needs time and a bit of caring, a bit of love, good nutrition, sleep, sunlight, and nature, all those kind of things. which is for free, but you can't really prescribe that.
Right. Yeah. I remember I read somewhere that in the early 1900 there were actually hospitals that were outdoors, and they did this because people healed much faster. And that goes back to, again, how we have removed ourselves from our natural habitat, which is nature. And I think this is the cause of a lot of issues today. And I think that's why I feel like it's so important that we return to nature as much as possible.
Yeah, we know more and more about less and less.
Yeah.
So we need to see the bigger picture. And we've known about the sunlight for our health, especially because every time the sunlight goes down, like in the winter, in the end of the winter, our D vitamin levels go down, and then the flu hits, the cold hits. And every time the sun returns, what happens? The fluid disappears and all bacterial infections, because the D vitamin levels go up, and also because we have a natural disinfectant when you go outside in the fresh air. There's much more air, and where people get infected, it is almost always with people you're very close with inside. So it's family, it's friends where you're inside and very close to each other. So every time you go outside, it's more or less safe.
Yeah, I also want to mention, if anyone wants to go more into this, I can recommend Dr. Jack Kruse, who is a doctor who is looked into a lot of the research on how important natural light is for humans and all animals and biosystems in general. And it's not only for vitamin D, it's also our whole hormonal system and our mitochondria. So we are designed as other animals in this world to be naked outdoors all the time. And
Exactly.
And this is what they see in the research, is that light is much more important than even food. So yeah, I would definitely recommend people to look into that.
What is our food? Our food is like a storage of light.
Right.
So the carrot is like, has the light on the plant, and it's storing that energy in the carrot. So what you're eating has to have life force or light force in it. And you can always, like we are this battery, we need the sunlight. Every part of us needs the sunlight, and also we need the grounding. We need both in balance. So get out into the sunlight, into nature on your bare feet, and get the sunlight on you. And I've even seen things like you have to have your lowest part of your body in the sunlight. I haven't tried that out to see if it works, but it could be working.
The lowest part of your body?
Yeah, just beneath your genitals.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's supposed to be very good for your hormonal system as well.
Yeah. So there's all different kinds of solutions. We're having these plastic shoes and plastic clothes on us, and it's messing with our electrical system. So I've just bought something that you put on your shoes to ground you. So my normal shoes, I can ground myself, because most of the shoes which are grounding in leather and stuff like that, not very pretty. I still want them to be pretty and practical. So I hope it's a solution. So I'm just testing it out to see if it works.
Yeah, I have some grounding shoes as well. But I must mention that if you do live in the city in the United States, you got to be careful with grounding in the city. Excuse me, because they actually they're not required to send electricity back to the electric company. So they will dump it into the ground. And so you're getting often, dirty electricity and higher amounts of electricity that our bodies are not designed to
Okay.
take in. But I don't think that happens in Europe. I've only heard about it in the United States.
It makes sense. There was one city I went to in the United States where I felt there was something completely messed up with the electromagnetic field, and that was San Francisco.
Okay, yeah.
They had these wires all over the place. It felt like my system was sort of completely messed up, my brain and everything. I haven't experienced it in other cities except that. It's 20 years ago, so I was in New York, so I haven't. It might be different today. But the last time I was there, I can't remember feeling that way. Yeah, but it makes sense.
And yeah. Do you want to talk about Feng Shui or more about the work that you do?
I've always wished I could make an elevator speech. So like 30 seconds, 1 minute, this is what I do, this is what I'm about. But I find it so difficult because once you open the topic, you can just talk about it forever and ever and ever.
True.
There's so many aspects to it. So what I'm trying to limit myself to, it's so hard to limit myself, is overall I work with human beings to be more of what they are. And I'm using whatever tool that's in my toolbox to get them to do that or to get them to that place. And I don't mind the tool. Like, it could be really weird, but if it works, it works. So I combine all these different things. There's some amazing teachers out there, amazing tools. And the more you learn, you also see that they're all connected. They're just different perspectives on the same energy. So the Feng Shui and the dowsing works with the electromagnetic field of the earth. The sound healing works with the electromagnetic field of the body. And then you have the spiritual aspects, which goes even beyond that. And then love encompasses the whole thing. And it's a really big topic. It's like we have so little time, like this lifetime is just a split second. So I understand why we're here probably several times to gain new perspectives, and some of us can perhaps remember things from the past where we had past lifetimes as a monk, as a nun, as being when we stand out. In the past, it wasn't really safe to stand out. So I've been burned on the stakes, chopped my head off, lost my tongue, hanged, everything under the sun. So every time I step out and I get resistance, there's some part of me that re-experienced that fear. But I'm seeing more and more that it's okay to stand out and it's safe to do it. And actually, it's very liberating when you're not being constricted by other people's opinions about you and the judgments about you. So it's really about liberating yourself, liberating your energy.
So you're a firm believer in reincarnation.
The body hasn't reincarnated, but the consciousness has memories from the past. It's a hard topic because you can sort of remember pieces of it. So I've been to places where I'm certain that I've been before. I've never been there before. I went to Puerto Rico 10 years ago, and I just knew all the streets. I just knew where everything were. And it's also a very old city. But reincarnation, it's a hard topic.
It's hard because for me, I was always a firm believer in reincarnation. Now I'm not sure that it's the individual soul that comes back in another body. I feel more like maybe this soul goes back to the uni soul, and then pieces come come back, and then sometimes you just resonate with that energy of that soul that lived back then, and therefore, because you are the same, you remember it. I would prefer that it were, you know, the soul, the specific soul that comes back, because you always want to preserve yourself. But I just feel like the other way makes more sense when you look at nature and how nature works. You know, the same leaf never comes back, but the leaf goes down into the soil and becomes part of the tree again, and then a new leaf comes out.
Yes.
So
yeah, it's something about we're trying to divide consciousness again, and it's not divided. And I just read Neil Donald Walsh, his Conversations with God, and we are like very linear in our perceiving of time, but everything is happening at once. So it's like different layers or dimensions, where everything is happening at once and influencing everything at once. So right now we're sort of living in the past, in the future, and now in different planets, perhaps, and different sexes and different whatever. So I wish there was an easy answer, but sometimes these questions are so big, it's hard to perceive and express it with a human perception. And we're just very limited by words.
yeah, but you have had something that seemed to you like memories of a past life.
Definitely. There's some things that just resonate with me, and I couldn't possibly have learned it in this lifetime. And there's some tendencies that I came in with pre-programmed. So even though people say that babies are completely blank sheet, come in with nothing, they have certain tendencies, certain personalities. My brothers are identical twins, and they are very different, even though they look the same, have the same genetics. So I could definitely see the two different people and two different persons, even though other people saw, oh, it's just the same, more or less. But it taught me that there's big difference, even though they look identical, even though they had the same upbringing.
And the same horoscope, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe a few minutes difference.
Yeah.
They have different numerology.
Right.
And they have different places that they live. They have different rooms. And I could see two identical twins. One had an easy time in school, or not an easy time, but he had it more easy. And the other twin, he lived in a room which was very dense energy. So he colored his hair black. He was drinking, and he had some physical issues. He was becoming shorter, or like more tight in one part of his body than the other, and had more digestive issues. And when he moved out as the first one. He was only like 16 or something, only like 300 meters away. But then I took over that room. And then when I was sleeping in that room, I was getting depressed. I was getting sick all the time. And I had the same issues with my hip and my knee. So what I found out years later, when I went back in time, I could see that there was a lot of underground water coming in, hitting the hip and the knee. There's also something we call a negative vortex, where the energy goes down instead of going up. So the energy is going like creating hell on earth. It's attracting all different negative vibrations, emotions. And I was constantly very messy in that area, putting my clothes there. So I was trying to avoid it, and I couldn't really sleep properly in that area. So even though we are not identical twins. We shared the same room and we shared some of the same experiences. So something wasn't our fault. It was the energy and environment. And some people blame themselves for things that aren't their fault. So if shame and guilt worked, our presence would be completely empty. So we need to let go of the blame, let go of the guilt, because it's not helping us. It's not protecting us from punishment. We would be way more productive if we were just more loving towards ourselves and allowed ourselves to get the support and help that's available to us. It's constantly trying to get to us, but we're rejecting it. We're looking away from it. So yes, again, it's about choosing to be what you are. And you are a beautiful being of light and love. And beyond words.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So, almost poetically.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and if you heard a noise there, I think my husband dropped something upstairs. So your brother moved out of that room, and did he then recover when he was away from that room?
If you have a home with a certain energy, you tend to attract the same energy. So you can't really run from it.
Okay.
So he got a cat, and cats always work where the lowest energy is. So they're sort of transforming the energy, and once they've absorbed energy, they have to run away and lick it off. So he took care of the cat for 1 year, and then he moved, couldn't take care of it, and then we got the cat. And where did the cat always want to go in? Into my room. So it was constantly trying to work and help me. So we're getting the support, whether we like it or not, from the animals. They're showing us the signs from the universe, giving us hints. So he had a massive breakdown when he was around 30. But then he called me and said, I want your help. So in his most massive breakdown, he was actually the most open for his massive going up. So I supported him and helped him. And today he has a kid, my nephew, and he has a beautiful a girlfriend, and he's very successful in his business. So he had to have that breakdown to build up something more beautiful and open and new. It humiliates us to see. Humiliate is the wrong word. It just forces us to surrender. We have the back against the wall and let go.
Now, did you always, when you were a kid, did you always have these intuitive feelings?
I had a lot of dreams. So I had a Danish assignment where you write a paper, and it was called Before You Sleep. And then in my dream, everything that was put into that paper came down. It was very amazing things coming down. So I tried to write the entire paper the next day, everything I remembered, and I got the highest grade from it. So it wasn't really me, just channeling through me. And as a kid, I was sleeping in the best energy before I went to that room, and I had a lot of dreams where I was flying around, and I could see I was very delightful, very joyous. just a very happy kid, maybe a bit naive.
That's a good quality, though.
So I was sort of hardened by life, and now I'm not that naive more. I'm
Mm.
still believing in the best in everyone. I still believe that everyone wants to do the best and wants to do good. You just sometimes been hardened by life or pain and repeating patterns from their family. It gives me some compassion with them.
Yeah. And when you work with people and you work with Feng Shui, is it do you have to, what if people live together and their directions are opposite, their success, like do you tell couples to sleep in one side of the bed and the other one in the other side of the bed, or
It's a very typical question I get, actually.
Yeah.
And there is different answers to it. So we have the day energy coming from the main door, and we have the night energy from where you sleep. So you try to sort of split it up so that one person gets the day energy and the other gets the night energy. And then you try to at least put it in the least of the unfavorable directions. And sometimes you try to put it in an angle or a different place so both can get the best energy. But you have to remember there's never perfect feng shui. Doesn't exist. So you're always trying to do the very best with whatever you have. So if you have a very small room and there's no other options, then try to do something about your personal direction, activating that more in the living room, or doing something about the office, or just whatever options you have. So you work with what you have as options. So it's not like, yeah.
And Feng Shui is a very old system, right?
It's several thousand years old. It's there's I Ching, which a lot of feng shui is built around. It's the book of transformation, and it's supposed to be 6,000 years old. But I think a lot of this information, I don't think this is the first time our human consciousness and society and civilization has been at this level, or sort of this level before. I think there's been civilizations before, Atlantis, Lemuria, where this information was available. So I think it's been transferred or handed down the ages. So it could be even more older than that. And I think also a lot of them were more tuned into nature and into intuition. And we're starting since the 14th century to have developed a more mental body, because we have to learn to read and write and pass on knowledge in that way. But we are losing the practical experience of how things are, which was more in the past. So in Egypt, they had the mystery schools where they taught through plays instead of having mentally, this is how you do it. They were transferring knowledge through the third eye, sort of giving them the pictures, or doing plays where they acted out the things. What was the question again?
It was about Feng Shui being a very old system.
Oh yeah. Okay, there's also another thing, is that Feng Shui is separated into two different main, like they have the yin and the yang. We have the masculine, which is all about attracting a relationship, attracting money, being successful. And then we have the yin part of it, the feminine or the earth part of it. So most of what is happening in the Western world is that we only got the masculine part of it, but it has to have balance. So I work with both the masculine and the feminine, because without creating a clear platform for receiving for the universe, you're not going to receive anything. You're not open for it. You're repeating the same pattern. You're in beta vibration, brainwave wise, where you feel stuck, where you feel like you want to do changes, but you don't have the energy for it. You don't have the ideas for it. So by lifting up the energy to the alpha brainwave, you opening up your body and your mind for both receiving the ideas and acting on them. You don't feel as stuck as you are in the beta brainwave. So by lifting the energy through Feng Shui, you're opening, as I did, for new solutions, and it could be way quicker than you expect. Also because of all the other work I've done, I think the Feng Shui went faster. If I haven't looked into my emotional management and my nutrition, I wouldn't have gotten as fast results with the Feng Shui. So see it not as the only tool, but one tool in the tool chest you can use.
And if people want to get started on Feng Shui, like what would you recommend?
There's different schools of Feng Shui. I try to combine them. So there's like landscape school, compass school, Kua number, and they can go to my homepage if they want and get the free ebook about finding their own personal Kua number or energy number, so they can see what is their best directions and what are their less favorable directions. And just start there, because that gives already 11% of, it's said in Feng Shui, we have the earth lock, which is 33%, so that's the environment. And just by changing your bed and your office according to your best directions, that gives 11 of the 33%. Then you have another 33%, which is human luck, your thoughts, your actions, your beliefs. And then you have the spiritual luck, where you're born in the world, which sex are you? Do you have a meditation practice or religious practice, whatever you have. So it's all working together. And most people only look at one piece of it.
Okay. And is that in English?
Yep, yeah, I have it in English. So it's just SimonAugust.com.
Okay.
I have the ebook and everything in English there. Also, I have a YouTube channel, Zimon August. So I'll try to put up different meditations and information there.
And we'll definitely link to all that.
Thank you.
Would you, I think a lot of people, at least in the United States, are not really, they haven't really heard so much about numerology. Could you describe what that is and why that's so important?
Yes, I just have to check my phone, 2 seconds.
Okay, sorry.
Just to see. Have a text here. Okay, so numerology. Perfect. There's different numerology directions. We have the Chaldean, which I work with. Then we have the Pythagorean, which is a newer version. And then we have the Indian numerology. We also have a Jewish Kabbalah and different sub categories of numerology. So what numerology is that we have the nature, we have the world. And it's like a binary code, a computer code, a lot of it. It's like with the numbers, you can see different patterns of the world. You can see Fibonacci numbers. You can see the golden mean. You can see what is it called? Yeah, there's different things in nature. You can see how nature works through mathematics. It's very mathematical, the universe. So you're born on a certain date, and that is your higher self. So you have a certain date, a month, and a year, and that creates certain tendencies certain issues and certain problems, and also certain potentials. So you can't change when you're born. So if you're in nature, you're an animal, you have that as a birthday, you only have that. Then you also have the physical self, like what's happening on the physical self. And in numerology, Chaldean numerology, you work with the names. In Pythagorean, you only work with the higher self. You don't work with the name changes. So in the Chaldean, you have a heart center. So that talks about like your finances. It talks about your health and your upper body. It talks about how other people perceive you when they have like a first impression. So numerology is like a diamond figure. And then you have the solar plexus, and you can see like what's your health in your lower body, how your relationship is towards your near family and friends, closest family and friends. And I, again, didn't believe in numerology at all. I think I'm sort of quite skeptical in a way that I have to try it out for myself before I'm convinced. And I think that's the most healthy way to do things, is just try it out for yourself, be open, but then see what happens.
And what's the actual process? You change your name, right?
Yes, you change your name. And why does that make a difference? Again, it's about the collective field. So you have your names in the collective field of your country. So by changing your name in the collective field, you're changing your vibration. So even though you call yourself something else, or your family call you something else, it still has a much more impact what you're registered with. So I knew already a few years ago I was supposed to change my name. I was told by my teacher, master teacher, something about the last names. Okay, so I have a friend who's a numerologist, and I was trying to get a session with her, but things kept coming up, like obstacles. She didn't have time, I didn't have time. So finally, when I was finished as a physiotherapist, we had our session, and because she knows who I am and my intuition, I was allowed to actually pick my own vibration. So not the names, but just the vibration. And she had a dream the night before, but she wouldn't tell me what it was. She also asked her teacher what was good for me, but we both looked at the option and like, no, it's not that one. It's not right for me. So she put out the 25 options out in 5 different papers, 5 on each. So I went with my dowsing rods from each one. And then the final one, it opened up and said, yes, it's on that piece of paper. So I closed my eyes, put my finger on the paper, went in a circle. And when I went to the last option, my stick dowsing rod just went berserk, just went round and round and round. And I got this flush of energy, of heat. And then she looks at it and says, that's what I was dreaming about. That number, 17-8. It's not a very normal option for my vibration. It's called love on the outside, an angel in the inside, middle name, and then love as a surname. So it made perfect sense. And what I knew from sort of the past lifetimes, what I'm here to do is that in the past lifetime, I've been a monk in Tibet, and I was afraid to leave the country when they were invaded by China. So in this lifetime, I have no mountains to flee into. I'm living in perhaps the world's flattest land, no mountains at all. You can sign on that.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere to hide here. I have to come out into society. So that energy I was getting from numerology was about being on stage and getting the urge to get on stage and shine. So without that change, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't be able to talk with you. I was like constantly being crossing one hurdle after another because my family is very afraid of being in the spotlight. So I couldn't have chosen a more proper family to to hide in. So it's like we don't sing it at birthdays, we don't dance, we don't express our opinions, we hide our emotions. Very typically Danish. So what I came with was everything that was opposite towards that. And what happened after I changed my name is that the first 6 months, everything that was in the old name came up. So it's like relationships became very obvious that some of it didn't work. So people that were talking behind my back or going behind my back, so I had to cut them out because it became very obvious that it wasn't helpful or healthy. Also, some physical things came up to cleanse out or clear out for the last time, including allergies. And I got the urge to be more on a stage and talk, doing podcasts, doing videos. And it's just really, really helpful because my intuition also started to increase. It was like I could go into an apartment or room and just know whatever happened there, I just knew it. I could say things that I don't know where it came from, but it just said it. And it's really weird, but it made sense for them. I had one experience where I was going to a client. I was walking up the stairs to her, and then all of a sudden I got like really hurt in my right knee, leg. And then I just said it as the first thing, okay, this is really weird, but do you have something about the right leg here? Then she pulls down her pants and she shows me like she had a big bump on it, on her leg. And I haven't met her before, and she just takes down her pants and shows me. So it's really weird, like things that you have no possibility of knowing, no consciousness of knowing, you just get the information.
So your intuition just became stronger after you changed your name?
It became a lot stronger. My finances became better. My health became better. My relationships became better. What I had in the previous name was a feeling of being a victim sometimes, and also having issues with my lower part of my body. So it could be like digestive issues and stuff like that. And also a lot of mental things going on, like thoughts constantly going around in circle and never stopping. And now I've changed to another name because I've learned about a deeper vibration. And as I told you, I had the author vibe getting into that name. And then, 9 months later, I've written a book.
That's amazing.
So it was really powerful. I didn't expect it, but I was surprised. And it's weird because in Denmark we are quite advanced in numerology compared to the rest of the world, it seems.
Yeah.
So it's like in Denmark it's been really developed for some reason.
I know a lot of people in Denmark who have changed their name because of numerology, but I don't know anyone here in the United States.
No, it's really crazy. I hope it gets out to the world. One of my mission is to get it to the United States and to Britain. I think a lot of people will benefit from it. So it's not about being another person because your higher self is still the same, but about your mission getting out the fastest or the easiest way. You get the right tools. It's like having the right clothes on instead of something that's too tight, or you have perhaps an orchestra where you're missing some of the pieces, you're missing some of the instruments, or you have an instrument that's just being crazy and acting out. And also you can see into people's past, like not only why they're here, but also their strategies on an emotional or mental level. And it's really interesting. It's like stripping people naked. Not to make people afraid, but you see a lot of things that they can't really hide it. It's just the bare truth. So even though they're saying something, you can see, okay, there's something else going on here. It's very interesting.
You can see that in their numbers, or what do you mean?
Yes, it's like I have the numbers. That's like an archetype. You have certain descriptions of it. But then you also have your intuition combined with that. So it tells a story about the person, their unique fingerprint. It doesn't say exactly what happened. It says some tendencies that might happen. And for example, I could look into Numerology of Denmark. So this year, from March till June, we had a lot of fear here in Denmark, and you could see it in the numerology. Then we can see from the numerology in Denmark that the rest of the year is a lot about being stressed out, a lot of things to catch up, and also financially going up and down. And I could see the same things in the Feng Shui. So even though it's two different systems, you have the same outcome, more or less. And also, quite funny, the Feng Shui this year is called Violence and Theft Star, which is about things, cash flow going up and down, riots, revolutionary energy, like a mixture between anger and fear. And also we have an energy in Feng Shui, the most transformational star on the east, where the coronavirus is supposed to come from, which is about the governments being transformed, health systems being transformed, and the family being transformed. So it's called Disaster Star or Transformation Star. So it's like you have to look at the past, what you've done in the past, and where you want to go in the future. You can't really run from it. And that's what happened on a global level. We can't really run from it. We have to look into it. And then we also have the disease star on the south, which is summer, sun, infectious diseases. So it makes sense why it's here, the number 2. So how can we uplift that energy? Is that we can use wind chime to place in the south part of our home to get faster transformation, faster solutions, and also towards east to create a solution for the global government, health systems, nature, etc.
Good to know. I would definitely do that. Yeah. Well, I could just keep talking to you all morning or evening for your part, but I don't know if you want to. We've been talking for a while now, so I don't know if you.
I think it's a good idea to get some water, and also because people have a limited span of attention, and we have to take care of, like, I understand people are busy, have a schedule and things to do. Even though we're very good company, they have other things to do. I think it's good to stop here.
Yeah, that's true. It's different for everyone, but for me, I like when podcasts are long because I download them and I use them when I walk or if I'm going to sleep and I need just to listen to something, So I like it, the longer the better, but I think most people they're not like that.
Yeah, maybe like we have to do chapters.
Yeah, true.
So this is the first chapter. We'll do a part 2 again sometime.
We'll have to have you come back. Is there anything else that you want to get in this one before we wrap up?
Just that I love you all, and thanks for listening. And choose courage. You always have that choice. So that's all.
Beautiful. I love that, and love you and appreciate you very much. And thank you so much for being on the Nordic Magic Link podcast.
Thank you.
Would love to have you come back, and we'll definitely link to everything relevant to you, your YouTube and website and whatnot, Instagram. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.